If the Highwire 40 and Deepcool Morpheus had a PC case baby in a cheap hotel, the Gamdias Atlas M1 would be that baby. Did it get the right mix of traits from its proverbial parents, or is the family resemblance the only thing the Atlas M1 has going for it? Well, we're gonna find out right here, right now on Robeytech. I had the opportunity to build a PC inside of the Gamdias Nesso P1 recently, and that build actually turned out stunning. So when Gamdias asked if we wanted to take a look at their Atlas M1 case, I said, say less. And here we are. So we're gonna give it that Robeytech Ultimate Case Review treatment to see if Gamdias delivered a Titanic PC case or if the Atlas gets a shrug from us. Starting off with pricing, the Gamdias Atlas M1 is available in either black for $94.99 or white for $89.99, which is backwards from what we're used to seeing when it comes to pricing. As far as dimensions go, the Atlas M1 is 16.54 inches or 420 millimeters deep, 8.27 inches or 210 millimeters wide, and 18.31 inches or 465 millimeters tall. Comparatively, it's slightly smaller than the Highwire 40 and 1 millimeter shorter than the NZXT H5 Flow. As for weight, the Atlas M1 weighs 16.75 pounds or 7.6 kilograms. That puts it around half a pound or 0.24 kilograms heavier than the H5 Flow, but 2.2 pounds or 1.2 kilograms lighter than the Highwire 40. Now you're probably wondering why I'm not comparing the Atlas M1 from a size perspective and dimension perspective to the Morpheus, since we mentioned it in the intro. And the honest answer is we're talking about the Morpheus specifically because of the LED panel on the side of the case. Now, the panel on the Atlas M1 shows very little information. You can either see the CPU temps, the GPU temps, ambient or room temps, or shut it off. But you can't see all the temps at once. It's also very dependent on the Gamdias Zeus cast software, which you download from a Google Drive. The last company that put their software in a Google Drive for download, well, let's just say you can't buy their stuff in the US anymore. Now, is that actually attached to Google Drive? No, but the point is, come on Gamdias, put your stuff on a CDN. Don't put it on a Google Drive. It's just weird. Now, let's talk about the screen. The screen will not display any information until the software is actually installed, and it will go blank during boot, shutdown, and actually under high CPU load. We also noticed CPU temps were a few degrees off from the readout we were getting from their Gamdias AIO. It did, however, do a really good job of accurately reading ambient temperatures, so it's not a total bust. And honestly, for some people, it's still a pretty cool thing to see. I mean, we heard the fans ramping up a little bit earlier, like, oh, it's in the 70s, that's why. Now, it is also important to point out that the panel connects via internal USB, and it uses one of the front panel cables to sync up with the big temp button on the front of the case. This button manually changes the focus of the display. It works fine for what it is, but overall, the display just feels a bit feature light for being such a main focal point. Then again, this is a budget case. Now, as for front I/O, the Atlas M1 has one USB 3.0 Type A port, one USB-C port, and an HD audio, as well as buttons for RGB, which looks like a reset button, but it's actually an RGB button. The temp button we mentioned, and the power button, and all of this actually located to the right of the LED panel right here. Now, usually we mention this once we get inside the case, but now's a good time to mention that all of the I/O connections are individual plugs. No unified connection here. Kind of a bummer, but I don't know, maybe not surprising. That being said, the Atlas M1 does do a good job of creating a really open view of your components with its tempered glass front and side panels. Both are easily removable, making teardown for building inside really convenient, especially if you wanted to access the side intake fans. This is a good segue to move inside of the Atlas M1 to see what's going on behind the glass. For motherboard compatibility, the Atlas M1 has support for mini ITX, micro ATX, and ATX motherboards. We did notice that out of the box, the Atlas had motherboard standoffs set up for a mini ITX motherboard. Gamdias did include just enough standoffs for an ATX motherboard, so just don't drop or lose any of them, which I've never done in a PC build ever. Just kidding. One other thing to point out with motherboard support is that this is not a back connect PC case. Now, we're okay with that. While the style of the Atlas would make for a visually interesting back connect case, there is just not a lot of room in the back in the way for BTF or Project Zero connections to actually work. Now, moving on to GPU support, the Atlas M1 supports GPUs up to 410 millimeters in length. That's more than enough room for larger GPUs like the Asus ROG Strix or MSI Supreme RTX 4090s or the Aorus Master Radeon RX 7900 XTX. Now, since we're talking about GPUs, the cutout to get power to your GPU is in a really weird place. For some reason, Gamdias put a cutout close to the front of the case. With panoramic cases like this, it's just right out there in front where everyone can see, which brings us to the PCI slots themselves. The slot covers have to be broken out of the case to actually open them up. This makes the case feel really cheap to us, and it also feels really wasteful too. Those removed pieces are actually literally trash once removed, and they can't be put back into the case to close things out. So not only that, if you're going to replace the GPU with one that takes up fewer slots than the previous one, you'd basically just have a gaping hole back there. We just want to cover them up, man. Is that too much to ask, Gamdias? Moving on to fans and cooling, the Atlas M1 supports 3 120mm or 2 140mm fans at the case top, 2 120mm fans at the case side, and 1 120mm fan at the case rear. The Atlas M1 does come with 2 120mm reverse fans installed to the side and 1 120mm fan installed in the case rear. We don't have any information on these fans other than their size, so we'll have to wait to see how they actually perform. What we can tell you right now is that the reverse fans have a weird whine to them that's really kind of unpleasant, especially if you're sensitive to fan noise. We've actually had it kind of wind up a few times during the review, so if you hear it, that's why. As for AIO and radiator support, the Atlas M1 has support for AIOs and radiators up to 360 or 280mm at the top, 120mm in the case rear, and 240mm at the case side. Now, something that's really important here, guys, is that if you're going to install an AIO or a radiator, you're going to want to plug in your CPU power cables to the motherboard before actually mounting the radiator, both in 240 or 360. There just isn't enough room to basically do it once it's installed. Unless you have magic baby hands, maybe you do. If you want to use an air cooler, the Atlas M1 supports air coolers up to 160mm, which is enough space for air coolers like your NZXT T120 or the Gamdias Boreas series of coolers, but not much else. Now, moving on to storage space, the Atlas M1 has hard drive bays for either a 3.5-inch drive or 2.5-inch SSDs. That's not bad for a case this size, and plenty if you are wanting to move drives over. As for power supply support, the Atlas M1 can support PSUs with a length of 180mm. That's enough space to accommodate PSUs like NZXT's new C1500 Platinum at 180mm or the 150mm long Asus TUF Gaming Gold 1000 watt PSU. And this is where we have to talk about cable management. Since the Atlas M1 is a thin case, there isn't actually a lot of depth to work with. It does have a bit more space down at the bottom to tuck away your extra cables, but you're gonna need to plan cable management and cable placement since you're also fighting limited depth and massive pass-throughs. We built inside of the Atlas on stream, which you can check out right here, we used cable extensions that allowed us to lay the 24-pin cable a bit flatter than most standard PSU cables would. If you aren't going to use extensions, you really need a PSU that has individually sleeved cables like the TUF Gaming one I had just mentioned. Even then, with the back panel secured on our case, there was a slight bulge to it. You really do need to be careful with your cable management, specifically towards the center. Now, if you want to check out the build process, pop over to Robeytech live channel, and while you're there, why don't you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and also you can do that right here as well. That would be huge for us. All right, it's time to see how the Atlas M1 performed in our thermal benchmarks. What we're gonna do is we're gonna slap some details about our test bench right here on the screen. So feel free to pause the video to see those in more detail, and make sure you pause on the charts if you want a broader picture of where the Atlas M1 falls in comparison to other cases we've tested. As a quick reminder, all of our PC cases are done using the same components every time with the same testing environment, and with all the same tests are run on Intel stock CPU power settings and at the same ambient temperature. Okay, so on to the numbers. While idling, the Atlas M1 held average temperatures of 27 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 37 degrees Celsius on the GPU. Comparatively, those temps land the Atlas M1 between the Lianli O11 Evo and the Cougar FV270. Under full CPU load, the Atlas M1 averaged 75 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 31 on the GPU. Those temps put the Atlas in the middle of the pack for our tested PC cases, right in between the APN XC1 and the NZXT H9 Flow. Not bad, but also not as amazing as some of the other cases we've seen recently. As for our 1440p gaming benchmarks, we saw a far more positive outcome for the Atlas M1 with average CPU temperatures at 45 degrees Celsius and 65 degrees Celsius on the GPU. This positioned the Atlas in between Lianli's O11 Evo RGB and Evo XL cases. Overall, the Gamdias Atlas M1 landed squarely in the middle of the pack, not outstandingly bad, but not surprisingly awesome either. And that's pretty much the whole theme with the Atlas M1, so would we recommend it? When we look at the whole picture, the Atlas M1 is trying to be an affordable, mid-tower panoramic case. It succeeds at being small and performed decently in our thermal benchmarks, but it sacrifices a lot of build quality and cable management space to actually get there. Now, you're probably thinking, Robey, you're just hating on the case because it's an inexpensive case, but I want you to hold on to that thought because there are a number of cases in this price range that we'd recommend over the Atlas M1. For example, the Montech King 95, which is slightly longer and wider, but shorter than the Atlas M1, has side air intake, it's panoramic, small, it supports the same style of motherboards, and the build quality is worlds apart. On top of that, we've seen the Montech King 95 with prices as low as $85. But that's not a mid-tower, Robey, they're not even the same. Okay, I hear you, oh champion of Atlas, but consider the Phanteks NV5. Sure, it's bigger than the Atlas M1, but again, it's side air intake, it's panoramic, supports the same motherboards and build quality. You guessed though, overall quality, worlds apart. And it's within $5 to $10 of the price of the Atlas. That doesn't even take into consideration cases like the Asus A21, the NZXT H5 Flow, Lee's Landcool 215, Antec P20, the Fractal Focus 2, and so much more, all within the same price range. When you start looking closely at the competition the Atlas M1 has at that price range, it just kind of gets lost. It is a decent case, but we think that there are better quality cases for the money. Sure, you're getting fans, and that's awesome, and you're also getting a monitoring system and screen, which is cool, but those weren't really impressive enough to us for it to set the Atlas apart. That being said, honestly, if you like this case, and you like the aesthetics of the case, and you're unbothered by the critiques, the Atlas M1 does a decent job of shouldering the burden of cooling while showcasing the components inside. There is no reason not to build inside of this case if you like it. And if that's what you're after, then awesome. The Atlas M1 just struck us a little bit less mythical than its name implied, and even more so than some of the other cases we've actually tested from Gamdias. But that's our review of the Gamdias Atlas M1. But before you leave, we want to know what you think about it. Do you like the features like the embedded monitoring, even if they are limited? Also, if you like do you like the panoramic? Do you like the fact that it's already set up for mini ITX? Or what other things would you change, and are you okay with the price? Let us know all that down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, go ahead and slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post a video like this right here on Robeytech. And if you want to continue the conversation about this case or any other, or PC building in general, head on over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. Amazing place to have conversations about this, and if this is the right build for you, etc. And you know what? You'll meet other like-minded tech and PC enthusiasts, and you know what? You might just make a friend. Also, make sure you follow us at Robeytech on all the other socials. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.